You guys are gonna love this one. So Kamala Harris has been getting some amazing polls over the past few days, and today was no different after a key new poll just came out showing VP Harris ahead in multiple swing states. Now I do want to emphasize, we still have to vote, we still have to mobilize. Early voting is likely available in your state, so go take advantage of that. But with that being said, this new polling really explains Donald Trump's extra erratic behavior this past week. Of course, his entire campaign has been erratic, but over the past few days, he has been saying that election fraud is ramping back up, that Democrats are placing ballots in key swing states, and that we are trying to steal Pennsylvania, none of which is true, none of which has any substance behind it. So I want to break down some of the most interesting aspects of the new polling we got, but first I want to break down Donald Trump's election fraud lies and the desperation in his voice. With 5 days to go, we have no time to waste. Make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe so we can get to 1 million subscribers. Double check to make sure you're subscribed below. So Donald Trump sent out this post less than an hour ago. He said, quote, "We caught them cheating big in Pennsylvania. Must announce and prosecute now. This is a criminal violation of the law. Stop voter fraud. Check out Kamala's new sleazebag lawyer. We are on them all this time. Who would have ever thought that our country is so corrupt?" There are so many things to break down with this, but first of all, I just want to say this is the exact same desperate tone that we saw Donald Trump use around January 6th and leading up to January 6th, especially when he said, "Stop voter fraud!" exclamation point. It reminded me of when he said, "Stop the steal" or "Stop the count" in his tweets repeatedly. Stop counting in states where I'm ahead, but continue counting in states where I'm behind is what Donald Trump said last election cycle, and this is that same type of desperation. I mean, if we wanted to break down everything in this Truth Social post, it would be an hour-long video, but let me really quickly just go through. I'm about to debunk the cheating aspect, but when he says that we need to prosecute now, who decides who gets prosecuted? Because last election cycle, all of the court said there was no election fraud. So is it going to be Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and Mike Lindell unilaterally making these decisions? When he says this is a criminal violation of the law, no bigger of a violation than Donald Trump's actual fake elector scheme and his potential secret with Mike Johnson, but any sort of violations that have happened so far have been caught. Whenever there are illegal ballots turned in, they are caught that same day, which shows that the system is working as intended. He then calls out Kamala's sleazebag lawyer when Donald Trump relied on Eastman, Giuliani, Powell. I could keep going. He said, "We are on them all this time. Who would have ever thought our country is so corrupt?" You know, I ask myself that every single day. And people have been speculating for a few weeks that Donald Trump is resurfacing these lies right now because he's getting some terrible internal polling and wants to lay the groundwork to contest the election, which is no surprise whatsoever. But if Donald Trump was winning in his internal polls, he wouldn't be saying stuff like this. Or if Donald Trump was supposed to completely demolish Kamala like he claims, he would not be so panicked. And since we're a pro-democracy show, the onus is on us to break down or to debunk Donald Trump's election fraud lies. Really quickly, fact check. Trump and his allies push allegations of election cheating and misconduct in Pennsylvania. Trump has made multiple false allegations of fraud in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. With under a week to go until Election Day, Trump and his allies are making allegations, and while some isolated issues have emerged, election officials are pushing back on any suggestion that there are deliberate efforts underway to suppress the vote. On Tuesday, Trump escalated these claims, baselessly accusing the state in a social media post of, quote, "cheating and getting caught at large-scale levels." This is Donald Trump once again claiming there is massive, widespread fraud, and we know it's because his internal polling is bad. How do we know that? Because the polling that is out in the public is bad too. We'll get to that. Really quickly, I want to show you this story right here, which is a prime example of how disinformation gets spread within the right-wing spheres, and this is Donald Trump's main claim of election fraud. This is Donald Trump's strongest claim of election fraud, and it's non-existent. Listen. So late Monday evening, the Trump campaign sent out an email saying, quote, "Delaware County, Pennsylvania arrested a woman for encouraging people to stay in line and vote, therefore actively suppressing their voting rights." Now, the RNC chairman, Michael Whatley, also shared a video of the incident on social media, and this lady crying saying she got kicked out for trying to say people should turn out. Now, in a statement, Delaware County pushed back on that claim and said that election officials stopped a woman who was being disruptive, belligerent, and attempting to influence voters waiting in line. Apparently, the woman wasn't even in line for any service. She wasn't even there for any service, if you can see my highlighted cursor right here, and then remained in the lobby for nearly 2 hours and approached various individuals, prompting complaints. People were complaining about this lady. So, Park Police then provided provided her with verbal guidance on appropriate behavior. As they do, there's an escalatory path you take. You first say, hey, you can't do this stuff. But they allowed her to remain in the lobby, where she continued to rack up complaints, and then she refused to leave. So the county said this remains a criminal investigation, but they briefly detained her and asked her to leave. After they briefly detained her, you can see down here, it says she was briefly detained. The woman later appeared in a video on social media with the RNC chairman Michael Whatley saying, quote, I tried to get the vote out, but was arrested for exercising my First Amendment right. Lord have mercy, this is a perfect example of how this pipeline works. This lady is probably screaming at people to vote Trump, saying, vote Trump. She wasn't even there to vote. So she gets politely asked to leave the premises after they gave her multiple chances, and then she makes a video crying and acting like the victim, as all MAGA do, and then Donald Trump boosts that video out into the public. Now we have millions of Trump supporters across the country thinking that they're going to get kicked out of the voting station if they just say the word Trump. Which brings us on to some of the polling that we got today. And the reason why this story was important, again, is because Donald Trump is relying to voter intimidation tactics and desperate tactics due to the early voting. Before we break down this new UMass poll, let's listen to what Harry Enton has to say.
Is that Harris, simply put, is more popular than Donald Trump. Her net favorable rating is higher than Trump. She's at -2, Trump's at -7. I went all the way back since 1956 and looked at the polls. Does the more popular candidate usually win? The answer is absolutely yes. 16 times the more popular candidate has won. Only one time the less popular candidate has won. I will note that was Donald Trump back in 2016. But of course, remember, Hillary Clinton was quite unpopular herself. But the bottom line is this. Kamala Harris has been consistently more popular in the polls than Donald Trump is. She's consistently had a higher net favorable rating than Donald Trump. And normally, usually, the candidate who's more popular goes on to win on Election Day.
Democrats are fond of that saying, forget the polls, when we vote, we win.
Yes.
And you see something in that.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the special elections, right? Democrats in special elections, their performances the last 2 years. What has happened? We're looking at state legislative and federal special elections. On average, these Democrats have surpassed Joe Biden's 2020 margin by 2 points. By 2 points. And remember, Joe Biden won. So the fact that these Democrats have been doing better than Joe Biden's been doing is a good sign. Historically speaking, there is correlation between how folks do in the special elections, especially in this polarized era, and how folks do eventually in the presidential election. It was actually one of the warning signs last time around in 2020, where Democrats really weren't doing that great in special elections, despite the polls saying that Joe Biden was going to win rather easily. It suggested Trump would do better on Election Day. This time around, the special elections are suggesting the opposite, that in fact Joe Biden, because Democrats have been exceeding Joe Biden's margin, that maybe Democrats will actually do better than the polls have been.
Now, there's more to the clip, but not to mention, Democrats have swept every election since the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Indicating.
But what about the fact, two factors. Yeah. One, the right track, wrong track. Country, so few people think the country is going on the right track right now.
Yeah.
And also something you pointed out yesterday as a factor, which is Biden's bad approval rating.
Yeah. So yesterday I pointed out that very few people think the country is going on the right track. Very few people approve of Joe Biden's approval rating. You can see it right here. In 2024, it's just 28% who say the country's on the right track, 40% approve of Joe Biden's job. But remember, in 2022, these metrics look awfully similar. In fact, slightly less believe the country was on the right track, slightly more approved of Joe Biden's job, but very similar numbers here. And remember, even though the top metrics were bad for Democrats in 2022, the White House party did historically well in that midterm. So the bottom line is, Kate, a lot of Democrats believe when voters vote, they win. And with abortion being a much bigger issue this time around than historically speaking when it was in 2022, Democrats did historically well. Perhaps Democrats will surprise a lot of folks and do historically well come next Tuesday.
So he's saying what we all knew, is that it comes down to turnout, and what he's saying to you guys is you better damn turn out. I already voted. Hey, did you guys vote? Let me know in the comment section below. Now let's get on to some of these polls. So this is the one that came out yesterday. A CNN poll shows Harris with a narrow edge in Michigan and Wisconsin. I wouldn't call it narrow, it's actually a pretty solid edge. Vice President Kamala Harris maintains an advantage in the blue wall states. In Michigan, Harris holds a lead over Trump by 48% to 43% among likely voters. That is a solid gap. Harris also leads Trump in Wisconsin, where 51% support her to 45% for Trump. Now, if Harris gets 51% of the vote in a state like that, that is automatically a win. It doesn't matter what percent Trump gets. But the race is tied in Pennsylvania, both with 48% support, and that's kind of scary. The largest electoral prize of the three states is Pennsylvania, and it could decide the entire election. Most likely, it will. Of the 7 states rated as toss-ups by CNN, Michigan and Wisconsin are the only two where voters' ballots still include RFK Jr., the former independent candidate who suspended his bid and threw his support behind Trump, but who was pulling votes away from Trump. That's why Trump tried so hard, so desperately to pull him into his campaign and had to promise him a cabinet position, which is scary. We'll talk about that in another video. In Michigan, Kennedy holds 3% support and 1% in Wisconsin, which could affect the results. But on top of that poll, the University of Massachusetts Lowell, the UMass Lowell Center for Public Opinion, conducted a public opinion polling at the state and national level. The nationally recognized center uses the latest technology and highest standards in its surveys and is a member of the American Association for Public Opinion Research's Transparency's Initiative. That was a mouthful, but you guys get the point. The UMass polls are good. VP Kamala Harris is in a tight race with former President Donald Trump at 49% Harris and 45% Trump, respectively. Now, they keep saying it's a tight race. It is a toss-up, which it is in the models, but 49 to 45 isn't a tight race. That is VP Harris winning by 4 percentage points. Donald Trump would call that a landslide. We should too. Now, Democrat Alyssa Slotkin remains ahead of Mike Rogers in Michigan's race for Senate, 48% to 39%. That also gives me some hope. Down ballot races show Democrats winning. And so this is really good. It's in Michigan, by the way. VP Harris being up 49% to 45% in Michigan. That is amazing, especially since we had a lot of concerns about the Muslim population not voting in Michigan. It seems like she could still win the state. Now, in New Hampshire, VP Harris slightly leads former President Trump. Why do they keep using the word slightly? In New Hampshire, she leads 50% to 43%. In North Carolina, it is a tie. It is essentially tied. Donald Trump is about even with VP Harris, Trump leading 47%, and Harris with 45%. And of course, Josh Stein, the Democratic candidate, holds a lead at 48% over Mark Robinson's 36%. They still call that a slight lead? Really? 12 points? You call that a slight lead? Why are they using this wording? Now we come down to Pennsylvania. Nearly tied, VP Harris stands at 48% of support, while former President Trump has 47%, and then Senator Bob Casey is leading 48% to 42% with McCormick. Those are some amazing numbers that are coming out as Donald Trump is going through health concerns on his campaign. I showed you guys this video last time, but watch Donald Trump barely even able to walk without dragging his right leg. You can't really see it as much in this clip, but in this next clip coming up, this man is dragging his leg hardcore, especially right here, limping. The man is getting old. He refuses to release his cognitive or physical exams. We can even compare clips of him in 2015.
That have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime.
Still an idiot, but an idiot that was able to project his voice in a way that this idiot isn't able to.
President, so here today is another great person, an American mom.
He is ironically turned into the low-energy candidate every single day. He has no energy on the campaign trail. And let's end this off by checking out the 538 forecast. Some of you guys don't like this, but if we look at Wisconsin's 10 electoral votes, VP Harris is now winning 56 times out of 100 times, and they use polling data, economic data, demographic data to run 1,000 simulations. And out of these 1,000 simulations, VP Harris wins most of the time. Let's check out Michigan really quickly. Oh, VP Harris wins 59 times out of 100. That is amazing, but the broader model shows Trump still ahead, 52 to Kamala Harris's 58. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Did this video leave you guys with some hope? Drop a like, subscribe, have a great rest of your day, and peace out.